doing their own thing, hoping to convince the market to give you a good price. Never, nada, no. Colombia has one company, Vietnam, Brazil. They act together when they enter the market. They have lawyers, they have financiers, they have government behind them. They really make sense. Those are some of the reforms we want to bring as per se. Once we go over these crises that keep hitting us, on Congo, you've started, it hits you. America hits you. We have to deal with those while at the same time trying to think about long-term for our country, for the agriculture sector and other sectors. You have a huge importation, you distribute to farmers, or you have a factory which produces those fertilizers at a cheaper price, preferably. But there are basic actions we can take at our household level. If you have education on how you mix fertilizers for coffee, there is a point at which potassium should not go in a coffee plant, or you should put nitrogen. But what we do, because there is no extension service, you get NPK combined, throw on a young plant. The young plant dries up, or doesn't do very well. So a little bit of education at sub-county level, because now you have parish development model going to a parish level. Maybe we cannot reach parish. Sub-county level, there is home fertilizers, manure from our households that we can utilize on small scale because we don't have large plantation owners for coffee. There are few. A lot of us have 5 acres, the largest 10 acres, and that where you use natural means with good education and a bit of water irrigation, you can achieve good production. The second level is, are you as a country able to produce your own fertilizers? Because a country by any name, or I hope you know the difference between a state and a country. State institution, the state is different from a country, but a state by any means should defend her territorial integrity, should clothe her people, should transport her people, and should feed her people. 4. Now, is Uganda doing that? For you to do good feeding, it's not by just rain fed. It is also irrigation and fertilizers. So we have 2 factories. One at least I know in Tororo that has had a lot of legal issues, eventually came through, and I see government giving them orders for fertilizers, but it's insignificant. We require 200,000 metric tons of fertilizers for us to double our production. We are doing around 40,000. There is another one that was given a license to operate here in Kampiringisa, in PG. It is in Tanzania and Kenya. There were 3-year delays just to get a piece of land, just to get delays after delays. They are now, I think, ready. They'll be using cow dung. They'll be using goat, whatever it is, animal manure, to be able to produce and sell at a low cost to the farmers. That for me is much more important than importation. Let me give you a scenario. When you import fertilizers and distribute them, first, a subsidy means that I can take fertilizers from Kashaka and sell them. The trouble we have had with medicines in hospitals. You take, you sell, so you've created a gap, you've destroyed your own production, but at the same time, you have incentivized a class of people who are not farmers. So there are some structural issues on importing and distributing. So I accept it as a temporary measure, but I think the main solution is to strengthen Dongsong and what they do in Tororo, and strengthen our brothers, I forget the name, from Burundi and Tanzania and Kenya, who have capacity to do 100,000 metric tons. Plus, we had another investor in using hydrogen to take oxygen, separate it with hydrogen of the excess power at Karuma, and create fertilizers. That project, one of our officers would know how far it is. So it's a combo in order for you to deal with this issue, but it requires leadership. So I don't see people who are leading on fertilizers in the country as a message. 2, organization. The reason we are not organized, we're not doing very well in the coffee sector, cocoa, you don't have a strong national coffee organization that negotiates terms and conditions the way Colombia does. So let's remember, I think there is a 30 to 90-day grace period. The purpose of this press event is that our country is not silent. When someone says, on Thursday in May, on this day, I will close my house, and all of you just keep quiet. No, we're speaking about this so that there begins an open engagement on some of the sensitive products, sensitive technology, because we also buy from the US. We buy aircraft parts, we buy some things. So it's two-way. It may be small, but Uganda is a growing country in a region that is full of young people who admire cultural products from the US, who admire technology from the US. So suppose we acted jointly as a region, we would say, okay, you put 10%, we are putting 15 or 20%, and they would listen. But you are too small to add up. So in terms of numbers, Brenda will give you the numbers, but the 5 key products that we sell to that market is coffee. And I had to admit that it's been green beans. So the reason I call you here is, for the first time in 63 years, we were shipping a container of roasted coffee. We have a Ugandan company registered in the US, in Aurora. I don't want to mention the brand, you know it. They roast coffee, but they roast from there. But for the first time, we had new technology, entrepreneurs who thought through, ready-to-drink espresso, ready-to-drink product. Now, you don't want anything shaking that effort. The first consignment is around $250,000, but the target is to raise it to $6 million progressively as you go to other cities. So the 10% affects that. You already have an effect on the green, not the same level with Vietnam, but you are not Vietnam. Vietnam sells vehicles also. Vietnam sells aircraft parts into the US. You are not yet there. Now, so there's the 10 on the green, and now the 10 on roasting. And roasted, so roasting is not the issue. By the way, we have about 17 roasteries in Uganda. I hope you know that, registered. It's the market that matters. It's whether you've profiled the market, its nutritional standards, and the market says, hey, we love you, come. That's what we do. We understand you, come. So when they say come, and there's a tax, and you are not ready at home, problems. The second one, I think, is we are doing leather bags, leather arts and crafts. Those had a huge shaking after January of 2024. And I don't want to repeat that. The third one, I think, was vanilla, right? Vanilla had a bit of shaking too, and it was doing very well. The fourth one is cocoa. What's the fifth one? For we were also selling milk, but in a condensed form called casein, an ingredient, a protein in milk that you use for tablet coating. So the economists were doing really very well on this market, and the sessions we've had there, the noise we have made. We were in Dallas in Texas to try and raise money for companies. We found a friend who bought a friend led us somewhere. We are now negotiating how to raise money for private-led industrial parks, private-run, ready-to-roll industrial parks based on agriculture and minerals. And that money is coming from that market. But it's not your IMF and World Bank money. No, it's private equity, private investors who have to know that you've put your house in order, and they can invest here and they can flourish. So I already told you that the numbers I checked 2024, 2023, April 2024, around $132 million. Of that, we sell to them. They sell to us, I think, we sell to them 115, they sell to us 132. That's small. I said we want to push it to 600, but it's a good start because 5 years ago we were only doing about 100 million worth of trade between us. So it's been increasing, and that's why we don't want to keep quiet when certain actions on the market are taken. So let me tell you, I think we've done very well even with AGOA suspension. When you look at our trade balance with the US, first of all, it's a very small amount of money. If you're selling, the trade between us is like $238 million. Our target on that market is to raise it to 600 million, and God willing, by 2035, $1 billion. So it is small. But even in that smallness, they sell to us around 132, we sell to them around 115. There is a small trade imbalance. Now, given where we've come from, a year of sanctions on AGOA, we've done very well. Now, having said that, you don't leave a market. The purpose of our meeting here is to make you aware of the effect, but not to abandon. To actually explain to people that the more you stick in with knowledge, the way you find ways and means to keep increasing products on that market. Because we have had the Food and Agriculture Authority, FDA, the equivalent of UNBS. They've assessed about 10 products, including toke, including vanilla, including for the first time roasted coffee ready to drink. But these things have all happened under AGOA suspension. So twina chetwaize somehow. So I am not even making a case that if AGOA doesn't come back, we are in trouble. No, we were finding a way to deal with this. So the only difference is increasing consumer price depresses demand. And we have not yet figured out how to address that extra 10. Either we should put it as working capital and cheap loans to exporters of roasted coffee. That could be one of the solutions, so that they don't have to pass it on to the consumers in the US. Or we should have a meeting with the US trade representative and make a case for Uganda. I prefer a case for East Africa. The reason Africa doesn't make much sense is you cannot sign bilateral agreements with 54 countries. At least if you deal with regions with one voice, that gives them capacity to negotiate. But it starts with awareness, and awareness is from the media, to understand the importance of negotiating as East Africa, not just Uganda. Because in Uganda we're still thinking of, I am from Kabale and I am from Chisoro, instead of seeing the bigger picture of the region and the continent. So we're not leaving those markets. We're not leaving the market. Where, for example, Canada, we are speaking to someone to see if we can have a direct connection, so that, and so Canada is different. You have to do double language on the label, French, and all those are costs. English is one. When you go to India, you may have to put Urdu and Hindu, or all those are costs to a company. We think about them. But where it's pure English, where tests are okay, it's nutritional things are the only issue that we deal with to get a product on the market. So these markets of UAE, I hope you know UAE is one of our largest trading partner. But the largest commodity is not coffee, it's gold. And gold has no industry here, which is a major issue for me, because we moved from $35 million to $3.2 billion, but there is no industry. Industry meaning you don't see gold bangles, you don't see gold watches made in Uganda, you don't see gold mixed with zinc. Those for me matter so much. So it's a huge commodity we are taking out. Coffee in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia consumes 72,000 metric tons. If I can get 50% of those, that's a gain. I would have to have research done on Saudi Arabia market, establish a trade hub, have a trade representative, and heavily market coffee from Uganda so that they don't think coffee comes from Italy. So a bit of work has to be done, but akugoba yakolachi yakuwa magezi. So when these shakings happen, me, I like them. There's a positivity about this. They give you the dimensionality of things. That maybe I'm looking at something from one dimension, I should look at distance, infrastructure, standards, and see if I can deliver faster, cheaper, competitively. Please, I emphasize, know that 45% of all our value-added products go in the region. So the market in the neighborhood is great. So you need to speak about Congo with a bit of fondness, not harshly. You need to speak about Kenya with a bit of brotherhood and sisterhood, because they are doing a good job allowing $500 million of your products onto their market. Not to come with the pomposity, which I see we have also grown. We're big. We can also, no, sorry. Markets are fragile. You understand them. You speak about them nicely. You walk gingerly. You speak honestly, because those are jobs for your people. And so 45% coming into our region, means that we're okay. But is okay enough for us to provide 1 million jobs we need every year? That's why we need the US market. That's why we need China. Last week we signed a framework agreement over coffee with China for 1 year, for Sim. So there are issues I have to deal with at home: aggregation, production, standards. But the US market is such a signaler that I want to make sure that we infuse their technology, their thinking, their understanding, their marketing systems in the rest of the world, because the rest of the world respects some of the actions taken on that market. I think I went on the side of the negative effect. There is positivity in what is happening even on the 10% tax. There is positivity even when the tea sector is struggling. And here are 3 positive things. The first one is that it teaches you to act smarter, to act better. So for example, we now have to look at what tariff rates within the tariff book in India or China or the US or Saudi Arabia we can apply to make sure that we do not have this negative impact on us, including the US. We can look at how best you land a product by working with the current rate, but really looking for areas to enter without necessarily dodging 100% this. Either you scale or find partnerships, but make sure that you keep on the market. The second positive thing that comes out of this is, for a very long time, for 7 years, we signed Africa Common Market. That protocol allows us 6% minimum tariff in any of the countries that signed. But we've not sold a single kilo in those 7 years. So now we have to really focus on, how do I deal with Morocco? How do I deal with Nigeria? How do I deal with Algeria? Because when one door closes, you must learn how to support businesses better, ensure that you do not lose your footing where you have presence, but you now open new areas like we've done with Serbia, which was not there for such a long time. So tea, we did a very good job, and not even this government. In 1967, there's an old man whose memorial I spoke about a week or 2 weeks ago. 1967, we set up the Tea Act. We allowed, I was not yet born, we allowed smallholders, not just large plantation owners, to have their own tea gardens. That reform gave us some 23 million kilograms By the time Idi Amin came on, you were not yet born. That had crashed to some 6 million in 1986. We shot again back to 60 million. Those, the area of Kanungu, Kabale, Bushenyi, Mubende here, there was a lot of tea seedlings that were given out. And in 2017, I remember, I was a participant in encouraging that, factories to process tea. We did a very bad job on quality. Because there is no enforcement at district level, we abandoned those tea gardens to the farmers. So they pick a whole branch instead of picking the 2 tea leaves that are fresh. They go for quantity. Quantity destroys quality, and our price began to go down. So there are some changes we are talking to the Ministry of Agriculture and the government about. First, to have some regulations that enforce standard of tea in those gardens. So you have a lot of RDCs, deputy RDCs, you have cows, you have the local government. A basic form of education on those guidelines and how to enforce them, how tea is harvested, how it is transported, how it is stored, is a game changer because the markets are open. Market of Ghana, $500 million worth of tea, black tea. Market of Nigeria, same. Market of Egypt. So it's quality. You address quality, you deal with that price. The second one, there is no such a thing as a sinking sector. It is the return on that sector. So if you are in tea or sugarcane or maize, you need large tracts of land. I think that's what the PS you're talking about is a dear friend. I think he must have been misquoted. When you have large chunks of land, you can take the large crops. And tea is one of those large crops that you need scale in order to get a good return. So those who have small gardens must come under an association. And there is an association of small-scale tea growers. When they aggregate, now they match up with the large plantation holders. So it takes the same cost of uprooting, actually maybe about 50 times more to uproot a tea plant and put something else, because tea lasts 100 years and more. So there is no quick turnaround that I can destroy the tea and plant coffee. It's just price, it is indiscipline, it is regulation, and it is lack of support to those farmers with fertilizers, lack of working capital for tea processors. Are those rocket science? No. Are they doable? Absolutely. Can we do them? Yes, we will do them. But we need to work together as ministries, Ministry of Trade on the Market, Ministry of Agriculture and Production, and those of us who understand the nuances of how you deal with markets. So I am not pessimistic. I think that good people with a bit of capital and education and regulation, the sector will recover. Every time we wake up, we are doing about 3 things. First, you check what's happening on those markets where you have some trade representatives. What is happening there in terms of changes, whether they are political changes, economic changes, social changes, taxes. So just so that you are in tune with what those markets do, because markets give us signals on whether we are doing the right thing or wrong thing. The second thing we do when we wake up is to try and solve problems of firms, FIRMS, companies. Companies are going through, since COVID-19, the aftershock effects. The companies that borrowed money to do certain things and then the market was closed, both domestic and internationally. We've been dealing with a lot of the problems that it's kind of like holding a wall so it doesn't fall on companies that export, because those companies are in our society. They employ people, they innovate. And so that's number 2 thing we do. The third one is to look at regulation. What's changing in the regulatory space? So you have the merger of institutions. It has an effect on how quickly you can certify products to export. You have companies investing in those sectors, and they want more granular knowledge than just, oh, we remove taxes for you, we get you land. Those companies are affected by the regulations we do. So those 3 things mean that every day we wake up, we are really concerned about markets. So if I can just run you through off my head. So if you think of the market of Serbia, which we opened in July of 2023, and we've been working hard first to take a bilateral agreement that was signed in 1963 and bring the 2 governments together to review that agreement and focus it on the things we do. Coffee, that agreement says coffee, cassava. None of you was born at that time, but it states the things that we are handling today. So that market, October last year, we re-signed that agreement. We set up a team between our 2 countries. There is change in the Ministry now of Trade. We have to go back in June and look at the bilateral air service agreement we signed. Look at how much tonnage of coffee or products have gone onto that market since we signed that agreement. And so every market is like how you wake up and do your grooming and check whether your shoes are right. This is what a country should do, especially small countries that really have limited capacity. If I speak to you about the market of DRC, we opened that market. We have a trade representative. We were opening up a trade hub. We were going to open on 18th of November. And suddenly, politics, military issues get in, but you have to keep on the market. The market of Kenya, we have to keep with dairy export companies to ensure that export permits are available. They are not stopped, or eggs or chickens, the issues we deal with. Market of Nigeria, we signed signed on a trade representative on December 16th of last year for a consignment of milk, of coffee, of fish, and a few other products. For us to take those products there, we need to deal with Africa Common Market Trade Regime. So we have to work on issues at home, setting up a national standing committee on that market, ensuring that Afrexim Bank, which has money for exporters, signs on with Uganda. They appear small to people, but they are really the only way to expand market and to grow. So just a couple of days ago, as you know, market of the US. The US, on January 1st, 2024, we ran into some headwinds and we were removed off AGOA. So we now had to find other ways to get into some of the regions. So we kept on the market, working with some of the cities like Detroit, some of the cities like Atlanta, trying to find independent representation in those markets, in those cities like Chicago and others. And so you must have seen this 10% imposed across the board. So you don't have AGOA, but the few products going in now have an extra 10%. So people should just stop consumption and first see what do we do here, because for us, who know that in the last 63 years, this is the first time that a Ugandan company is trying to sell roasted coffee in the US. It hurts us. And therefore, we speak about this, we try to find solutions to this because it matters to producers. So if I just tell you the 3 effects quickly and the 3 solutions so that you can think with me, please help me explain this to people who are doing politics, people who are busy enjoying their own things. They don't understand that consumption without production, production without markets, markets that don't support you, you are in trouble. So the first effect is that when you increase price, that price doesn't go down. So I may not feel the price in a cup of coffee, because a cup of coffee might be 0.5 cents of a dollar. But if I have a kilo on the shelf, and that kilo costs say $15, and we have a company, a Ugandan company, north of Chicago, with some coffee in supermarkets. We have a company here that did some innovation, and I hope we will be able to ship the first container of espresso ready-to-drink coffee into one of the cities in the US. So if you pick a kilo, it will be $1.50 extra. So if I'm a consumer, I have to figure out a way whether I have this money, an extra $2, or I should buy cheaper coffee from Colombia. Remember, Colombia, Uganda, Brazil are at 10%. It is people like Vietnam, the largest producer of Robusta, that are at 46%. But it means that if Colombia and Brazil have the nearness advantage, which they do, and they ship cheaply, and now both of you, all of you now have that 10%. Unless you do something different, unless your test profiles are great, unless you advertise, which we are not doing, unless you do some market promotion activities, someone will take the lowest cost on the supermarket shelf. That's effect number one. And please note that the price does not go back. If you bought cabbages during COVID and cabbages today, and there's an increase of 1,000 shillings, you're still at that 1,000 shillings. If you bought a kilo of sugar at 4,000 shillings, it will not go back to 2,000. So that's how it is. So that's number one. The second effect is that if you think of other markets that buy from the US, so there's a trade war between Canada and the US. They have imposed on each other 25%. But Canada spends $520 million buying coffee from the US. Will they buy more or will they buy less? And if part of your coffee, $60 million you sell, well, part of your coffee roasted is meant to go to the neighborhood market, they'll go for the cheaper ones. So that's effect number two associated with one. I think the third one is the question of distance. We are far away from these markets, and you have to combine logistics, crop finance, test profiles, and then land at the same price with your competition. Very difficult. Huh? So any slight disruption in how much quantity you put on the ship means that there are fewer ships shipping from you to them, and therefore the logistic prices go up. Huh? So this may not be very clear to many people. They think, oh, but we sell in Italy. Oh, but we sell in Saudi Arabia. Oh, well, you sell there, but let me tell you, the US market is important in three ways. First, in the last 40 years, I don't know any country, any newly industrializing country, whether it's Turkey, whether it's Indonesia, whether it's Malaysia, whether it's China, whether it is Japan, that has not grown based on this market. Because when you are on this market, you are competing at a global level, and your businesses begin to attract technology. So I want you to ask yourself, why is Google not here? Why is Microsoft not here? Why is Amazon not here? And these the big techs in the world, they are not here because you are a World Bank and IMF economy. Until your businesses begin to show capacity, until you begin to punch above your weight, you don't attract high quality FDI that does exports within Africa. So short-term thinking tells us, oh, now that this one is closed, I can switch. No, even where you switch, you have not prepared it. You've not prepared DRC, you've not prepared Nigeria, you've not spent time thinking about that. So any shaking in these markets affects us. Now, there are people who think also the US is not very important because we can find the market of China. So as I speak to you, I know that government officials will be flying to Washington to talk to IMF and World Bank. They call it spring sessions. It's good to talk to IMF and World Bank, but you're begging. You're really begging. The real deal is to have more market awareness on the US market so that you attract the best form of investment to help you. The second importance of this market is that it gives signals to other markets. So if Amazon ships bananas, coffee, leather from here, it gives a signal to its competition that this is a good sourcing place. So if you have a certain venture capital investing in your agriculture sector here, then you pull the competition to come here. So if you're thinking long term to grow our economy to tenfold the president wants, these markets are really critical. And for me, I just wanted that you help us explain these things. They don't appear very clear to people, but any shaking on the market kills jobs. When you kill jobs, you kill enterprises. Now, I don't know if you know this. For me, the highest creation of a human being is a business. That's why in Uganda we call it kusubula. It is the highest form of innovation because you are reproducing yourself. You are paying taxes. You are employing people. You are thinking better. You are innovating. How can you do that when markets are shaking or when you are not thinking about them when you wake up? I think I should just stop here. Brenda, who is in charge of our markets, can give you some of the actions we are taking on the regional markets and beyond. We will be releasing our report for 2024 after Easter. We are going to be thinking about how to reshape this PASAID, restructure it, so that it has a much better punch. It can raise money outside and help companies here to deal with interest rates. Any business that crashes hurts us big time, because you do well on the domestic market before you can do well on the international market.
New Vision TV. Stream smart, stream New Vision.